All right, well, welcome again, everyone. My name is Kathleen Callan. I'm the program coordinator at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. We're so glad that you all have joined us. And without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Denise Jess, our executive director at the council, so she can start off our official welcomes. Over to you, Denise.
Kathleen, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I am so delighted that we are gathered this morning. Equally delighted that we are gathered in the warmth of our homes and not standing out in the rain. So I think there's benefits to the Zoom platform. And the other night when we gathered for the first version of this class, we had someone join us from Portland, Oregon. And folks join us from Wisconsin. So the huge gift is that we can invite folks in from literally around the country to experience this together. So I am Denise Jess, the executive director of the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. Our mission here at the council is to promote the dignity and empowerment of Wisconsin's 109,000 people living with vision loss through advocacy on the public policy side, education, and vision services, really learning the skills of blindness. The great majority of folks that we work with, while there are certainly folks like me who have had vision loss all or most of our lives, the highest number of folks that we meet and work with are folks in middle and elder years who are experiencing significant vision loss due to disease. And we know our population will double by 2050. So many of us will be impacted by vision loss either directly or having friends and family, loved ones that experience vision loss. So we always hope that those of you who do not have vision loss on part of your life journey now will remember us when and if that becomes part of your journey, because there's so many skills that we can share with you that help to enhance and still live a very full and vibrant quality of life. This Birding by Ear series is one that just always speaks to my heart. We've been doing it now for roughly 5 years, if my math is correct. Pandemic always messes with time. Several years ago, Carrie Wilcox, who is one of the instructors today, came to us with this idea of using the sounds and songs of birds and even some of the physical movements to identify them. And it spoke to my heart because I've always been someone who has spent a lot of time in nature. I grew up on Washington Island, and we played outside and worked outside many, many hours a day. So my ears have always been tuned to what is happening in my natural environment. And I've been a backyard birder for most of my adult life. So this felt like such a great opportunity for folks in the blindness community to learn together and to expand our skills, and also to do something that's just really healing and fun and important, because we experience so many barriers on a regular basis that being able to have a wider skill set, a wider circle, just a wider knowledge base is really powerful for having the energy to continually manage those barriers. And then as we talked with Madison Audubon, and we decided that we would offer these classes in partnership with the sighted community, that was even more exciting to me, for people with vision loss and people who are sighted to learn together and to share talent with each other. So I'm expecting that today you'll have great opportunities to learn from Carrie and Jim. And when we're in the small groups, you'll have really powerful opportunities to learn from each other And then when we're on the field trip next week, those great opportunities to learn together. So without further ado, I am thrilled to turn it over to our Madison Audubon partners for an introduction and just checking. Brenna or Caitlin? Caitlin, I'm going to hand it to you just for the sake of easy transition.
Thank you, Denise. Yep. Hi, my name is Caitlin Schwabeck. I'm the communications coordinator with Madison Audubon. And Brenna, would you like to introduce yourself and say a little?
Oh, sure. I'm Brenna Marcichuk. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach. It's nice to be here with you all.
Yeah, so Madison Audubon is a local bird conservation organization working to protect and improve habitat for birds and other wildlife in southern Wisconsin through land acquisition and management, education, and advocacy. Really, we're a group of folks who loves sharing the joy of birds with everyone in our community. We host a lot of great field trips and events and citizen science programs, opportunities for folks to get more involved and learn about birds. And we aim to create experiences that are accessible for folks of all abilities and ages. We have 2 sanctuaries that we steward, and some at Goose Pond Sanctuary, Fayetteville Grove Sanctuary, and at Seagull Marsh. And these are open to the public to visit every day for free. And we're just really excited to have all of you here tonight. And I'll turn over now to Jim and Carrie, our presenters.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to share my screen here so we can get started and hide that. Okay. This is like Denise said, I think it's 5th or 6th year, maybe 18 to 20. Yeah, it might be our 6th year this year. So fantastic that I see a few returnees. Wonderful. My name is Carrie Wilcox. I've been doing this since we started. I have a background in biology, mostly focused on birds. So my interest has been with birds since I was a little kid. My dad had a feeder and would look at birds. My grandmother also looked at birds. So I've always been interested. And then our co-presenter is Jim. Go ahead, Jim. You want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Jim Denham. I am the Access Technology Specialist with the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm really pleased that all of you took some time on your Saturday morning to join us. This is a really exciting topic and one of my favorite presentations of the year. As mentioned, I think this is our 5th time doing this. And I always learn so much from being here and from meeting all of you and chatting with all of you and from listening to Carrie's presentation. It's just a really exciting thing. And you're asking yourself, well, what's the technology guy doing here? You know, birds, this is nature or whatever. There's some really cool intersections between technology and birding, which we'll talk about a little later on in the presentation, but some great tools that you can use to really enhance the hobby of birding. So I'm really pleased to be here and really happy that all of you are here to do on a Saturday morning. So Kathleen, are we doing intros this morning or are we just gonna, what's our plan here?
Yeah, well, we do have a, we've got a bigger group, but it is always nice just to get folks so we can hear those voices and, make sure we've got names. So what I think we'll do is we'll go through it, but we're gonna kind of keep them short. So what I'll do is I will call on everyone so we can make sure we've got folks on there. And if you can just, say your name, especially, correct it if, because I know sometimes the Zoom name and the person who's calling in don't always match. And then just say where you're calling from so we can kind of get a feeling for where, around Dane County or around the state, and then save all those great stories because I know everyone has a great birding story and you can maybe share those in the small groups. But since we do have a large group, if we'll just try to keep it to a name and where you're calling in from today. So so let me just pull up our participant list because I'm just going to go straight down the way Zoom has it. If we could get started, I've got David Driscoll. If you could, if you'd like to say hello and tell us where you're calling from.
Hi, I'm Dave, and I live on the south side of Madison.
Great, thanks, Dave. Jody.
Hi, I live with Dave. It's probably why I'm next on the list. And
Okay.
I'm downstairs and he's up.
Great. Judith.
Judith Rasmussen. I'm on the north side of Madison.
Awesome. Let's see. Gail.
Gail Green. I'm on the near west side of Madison.
Right. Mary Lynn.
Hi, yes, Marilyn Miller, and I'm calling in from Sun Prairie.
All right, thanks. Then we had a phone number, which I sort of matched up, which I hope I matched up well. So I think it's MJ and Teresa. It was a 608-333 number. So tell me if I got that right and where you're calling from or yeah.
I'm Jane and Teresa. We live in McFarland.
Wonderful. Kat. Let's see, Kat. I think Kat, you're muted. You can
Sorry.
Oh no,
Sorry.
you're great.
Yep, I got it.
Awesome.
I'm Kat, and I'm on the west side of Madison.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kat.
You're welcome.
Jane. Jane, also looks like you're muted. You can hit the space bar or press the space bar if that helps, or I can also ask to unmute you and then it'll pop up with something. I'll go ahead and do that and then might give you a couple minutes. I know it takes a while to navigate.
Okay, good morning. Jane, west side of Madison.
Great, thanks, Jane. Let's see here. We've got let's see. Sorry, we've got a couple. Here we go. Let's see. We've got Mary Wallace.
Hi, I'm Mary Wallace, and I'm here with Katie Ping Woods, and we're on the west side of Madison.
I normally live on the east side, but yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us again. And then we have Mary Burek Faber. Sorry about that.
It's fine. Burek Faber, calling in from Oregon, Wisconsin.
And I'm her husband, Mark.
Okay, hello, Mark. Yep. See, this is why I like to get everybody a chance to speak. And then we have Merla.
Yes, right here. So I'm Nancy, and this is Merla with me, and we're from the live in the west side of Madison.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. And now I'm going to do the embarrassing here, because I think that's everybody. But we do, sometimes the Zoom likes to jump around there, so I could easily. So I'm just going to give a moment here so that if I inadvertently skipped anyone, please speak up so we can hear your voice now.
I'm Julianne. I'm calling in from McFarland.
Thank you, Julianne. Here we are. Yes, and I checked you in, but I didn't.
No worries.
All right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right.
Oh, Linda and Melissa.
Great.
We're
Dear
west
too.
side of Madison.
Thank you.
Mm.
All right. Anyone else? If not, don't worry. We won't forget you when it comes to time to putting you in a small group. But thank you for doing that. Thank you for also being such good sports about keeping it short. And without further ado, let's get into the content. So back over to you, Carrie.
All right. Don't forget, if you want to get into the chat, put a question in, you can use Alt-H on your keyboard or the lower icon on the lower left. And if you're on the phone, dial *9, and that will raise your hand. And Kathleen will be monitoring these. We'll check in a little later for questions. Quickly, the goals of our talk today are to introduce folks. If you haven't been a birder before, I want to introduce you to a very popular pastime in North America and around the world. we want you to learn skills, not necessarily the birds that you're going to hear. It's going to be, you might not remember all of them after you wake up tomorrow, obviously, maybe even very soon after the program, but hopefully you'll have some skills that you can use to further your knowledge and learn these birds with time. And we also want to inspire people to be more aware of their surroundings and be champions for conservation of the environment to the creatures that live in the environment, including humans. And the photo we have on this slide is of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department out of sight songbirder tournament. It's a group of folks with white canes walking across a grassy field on their way to the tournament, and it happens, I believe, still down in Texas. There's a link on the materials for a short audio and video documentary about this. It's really cool. Speaking of inspiration, birders often talk about the spark bird that inspired them to get into birding. I have a number of them. I'm going to talk about one, and Jim will talk about his as well. One of my first field jobs back in 1998 was out on Turn Island in the National Wildlife Refuge in Hawaii, and it was in a small island. It used to be a Coast Guard station, so we were living in a bunkhouse. And every night you'd hear these wedge-tailed shearwaters, about the size of a football or so, seabird, and they would burrow underneath the bunkhouse, and this is what they would sound like. Can everybody hear that, by the way? Just want to make sure my sound is on.
It sounded good to me. If
Okay.
other folks can't, yeah, please let us know.
A few more seconds of this. So this would go on all night long. And there's hundreds of these birds. It's kind of a haunting, crazy sound, unlike anything you'd ever heard on, North American continent. And it just stuck with me. I think I recorded it. I was always talking about it. Really cool birds. And so then let's go to Jim. Jim, you want to talk about the bird that really inspires you?
Yeah, so growing up, I was very involved in Boy Scouts, and we took a lot of camping trips to northern Wisconsin, Camp Phillips up in Huggen, Wisconsin, and a lot of canoe trips up into the Boundary Waters. And I remember laying in a tent at night, and you'd hear these things out in the water, these birds out in the water, and it sounded like a ghost. A bunch of Boy Scouts, we always told you the ghost stories and a bunch of stuff like that, but you'd hear these birds, and it's such a haunting, reverberating sound, that the fact that this sound comes from one bird is just amazing to me. And it's just a sound that is so unique and very identifiable. Of course, talking about the loon. It's a really cool bird, and it's just an amazing sound, and it's just something that I always just rings true to me. Such a really cool sound.
Yeah, we both chose haunting sounds, Jim. What does that say about us? Interesting.
What does that say about us?
Yeah, exactly. Spark bird. So yeah, it could be anything. It could be a common bird in your backyard. It doesn't have to be anything exotic or far away from your home. Just something that really caught your attention and made you interested in learning more. Starting out birding, especially by ear, can be a little overwhelming. And as many of you may know, dawn, sort of early hours of the morning can be very active for birds in the summertime, especially. And it can be a little overwhelming for even seasoned birders. Oftentimes there's just dozens and dozens of species all singing at the same time. what I want to do now is play a little bit of a dawn chorus that was recorded up in Minocqua, Wisconsin, and I just want you to listen to it, not worry about what birds are singing or calling. Don't worry about identifying anything. Just try to figure out how many different sounds you're hearing, how many different types of birds you might be hearing. And in the chat window or just on a piece of paper, just note what you think. And then we'll come back in about 30 seconds. Here we go. All right. So go ahead and type in the chat window how many birds you think you were hearing, or just take a note if you're on the phone, and let's see what you guys think. I have my own guesses. There's a lot of this sound recording is in your materials. You can listen for about an hour and a half. It's beautiful. It's calming. It's just a lovely way to start your day.
Yeah, I often have it on in the background as I'm working. I'll just put this on in the background and just let it run. It's kind of just nice background music. If you've got other stuff going on, it kind of just, yeah, it's nice.
All right, I'm seeing a bunch of answers. They're all sort of centered around 10 or so, averaging 10, 11, 15 maybe. That's kind of what I got. I mean, that's, I was just doing it again. Oops, sorry, skipped ahead here. I was doing the same thing, and I recognize a lot of these birds, but the folks, especially folks that haven't birded before and don't recognize these sounds, that's great. I'm very optimistic for you. I think you're obviously people have been doing this for a long time. We've been identifying all kinds of sounds. We have a good brain for it, right? We can recognize human voices and musical sounds immediately. So it's not difficult for the human brain to do this. It just takes some practice to be able to identify individual species and put a name to them, if that's what you'd like to get out of this. All right, cool. That makes me very excited to see that. So a couple things to remember when you're out birding, and it'll help you sort of solidify some of these birds, is always knowing what kind of habitat you're in, what part of the state, what part of the country, what part of the world. Obviously, that's going to limit the number of species you're likely to see or hear there. We have a couple pictures on the screen, one of a red-winged blackbird, these small, sort of what were we talking about? Potato size, maybe a little smaller than potato. Blackbird with red spots on its wings in a meadow. And they like marshy, wet meadows. So, if you know you're in that kind of space and you hear this bird, a red-winged blackbird is a good chance, is a good one, a good choice for that area. Also know what time of year you're birding in. So know when you are birding. Time of day is also important sometimes. Obviously, night birds like owls aren't going to make much noise during the day. Even, we talked about the dawn chorus, so that's always going to get you all kinds of birds. But some birds are going to sing later into the day, be more active during the day. Some birds, like the red-eyed vireo, might sing just all day long, dawn to dusk. So it always depends on timing and place. We've talked a little bit, I've mentioned songs and calls. Birders and ornithologists will differentiate the sounds this way. Calls typically are produced all year round. They're not associated with breeding behavior. So they're not necessarily a territorial, they're not birds that are defining their territories, nor are they trying to attract mates. Usually they're just more communicative or contact calls. They don't necessarily have a lot of musical qualities, although that depends on the bird, obviously. They're less fixed, and I always feel like one way to listen is to try to listen for a real fixed pattern. And if it's a little more random and hard to predict, it's likely a call. So let's listen to a couple examples. This is first the American robin. So you can kind of you can listen to each note and try to predict when the next one's coming, and it's a little difficult because it just seems a little more random. This is likely a little bit of a alarm call there. They have a whinny call. It sounds a bit like a really high-pitched horse whinny. They have a whole bunch of different calls. They have one that's like an extremely high-pitched. It's very difficult to hear unless you're close. I hear that a lot when they're just sitting on the ground, and I think maybe they're trying to contact another bird. I'm not exactly sure what it's for, but it's a really interesting sound. Then we have the American crow, common crow that everybody's familiar with. So crows and a number of birds don't necessarily have what people call songs. I'm sorry. So this is a call of the crow. The crow, the jays, the ravens. They do not have a sound that is considered a song. So let's talk about songs next. Then, what is a song? A song is usually produced by the male. It's usually to attract females and to defend the territory. And often the males will, sing around the perimeter of their territories regularly throughout the day. And it's just a way to sort of define the territory, defend it against other males. These songs are usually limited to the breeding season, although sometimes if you're lucky, you can hear them in winter even. They're more fixed. They're innate. At least a template of it is often innate to the bird, and then they learn sort of the details from their father or the other males around them. But there's also female song too, and I think it's been understudied, so it's being studied more now. Cardinals, for example, females will sing. It's usually a little less complicated, but it often sounds a lot like the typical song. So it can be a little confusing sometimes. All right, let's listen to, with that said, let's listen to one of the examples of a cardinal song. And you may hear different versions of that, different variations, but it's a pure note. It's a very, very pure sound. And it's this, this is kind of a strong pattern. You can sort of predict what's happening next. Obviously, it can change. There's multiple parts to it, but typically you'll hear the group of sounds repeated over and over again during the breeding season, for 20 minutes or so. Another very vociferous bird is the house wren. This one, the example of the song here, is pretty common in people's yards in the suburbs here. The cardinal, sorry. Here's the house wren. And obviously that's a lot more complicated, but you can hear that it's this group of sounds, all repeated. There's three, we're hearing it 3 times here. There's a pause and then another time. And you can sort of hear the same group of sounds are repeated after each other, each of those 3 times. And that'll just keep going on, obviously, for many minutes during the morning. If you're not familiar with cardinals and wrens, the cardinal is a bright red bird with a black mask, has a crest on top of its head. It's about the size, as I think we were saying earlier, a potato is, like an Idaho russet potato, a little smaller maybe. House wrens are much smaller, kind of a dirt colored brown, a little more cryptic, about the size of a pill bottle. All right, test your skills here. Again, answer in your chat window. We're going to play 2 sounds and just tell us if you think it's a song or a call. So here's the first sound. Okay, that was sound number 1. So just put number 1 next to that one in your chat window. And here's sound number 2. I'll play them both briefly again. Here's sound number 1. Sound number 2. All right, let's take a look here.
And we do have folks on the phone too. So if you have folks on the phone, if you want to just unmute and speak up and just say what you think too, that'd be great. We want to make sure we're including everyone here.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Let's see. I'm seeing a lot of right answers here. Almost everyone's saying the first sound is a call, second sound a song, and you are all correct. Fantastic. You're already well on your way to becoming birders. The first sound is a hermit thrush call. Hermit thrushes are again about a little smaller than like a russet potato, dark sort of rusty brown overall, light belly, and a reddish rusty tail. The second sound is a song of a black-throated green warbler, tiny little birds, yellow and black, the black throat, which is why their name is how they get their name. And this is the song of a black-throated green warbler. They're about the size of a pill bottle. Insectivorous, migratory bird, comes through Wisconsin about this time of year, along with a whole bunch of different warblers. So yeah, they can be challenging, but that song will always identify that as a black-throated green warbler. All right, now birds also make non-vocal sounds, as was alluded to earlier in the introductions. They can function like songs and calls, but they're not produced by the syrinx or the vocalization. They often involve wing feathers, tail feathers, bill snaps, hammering like a woodpecker does. In fact, the drumming sound that woodpeckers make is sort of like their song. If they're just looking for food, it's not as regular or loud usually. So that really regular drumming sound you might hear is essentially a woodpecker song, attracting mates and defending territory. But let's listen to the mourning dove sound as it takes off from the ground, and you're probably familiar with this sound. So that is a sound of wind moving through the wing feathers of a mourning dove. And so again, that can be very distinctive. You can use that to identify the bird even if you didn't see it. I often just hear it while I'm out birding. Never see the bird, but I know immediately that's a mourning dove. The ruffed grouse also does something with its wings, but this is actually functions more like a mating display. So let's hear the sound of the ruffed grouse display. It's not letting me click on this. There we go. So you may hear that in forests. They tend to like deeper forests. And since it's a deep sound, low register, it can travel quite a ways. I think it does it once more here. And it is just beating its wings against its body. So it's using its sort of body cavity as a drum, essentially. Grouses are like a chicken size, a little smaller than a chicken, football-ish size, and they're very camouflaged, lots of browns and whites. So they're ground birds, so they blend in really well with the backgrounds. Okay, a little question break here. Let's see, Kathleen, have you seen any questions that look like they might be?
No questions yet. Folks have been, participating, but yeah, let's see if what questions folks have. So again, if you prefer not to speak, you can put it in the chat now and I'll read it out loud, or you feel free to unmute yourself, and then and then because it's sometimes we get excited, we'll just try to take a pause in between one speaker and the next. So yeah, who has some questions?
Let's see.
Yeah. Oh, here there is one question now in the was the mourning dove actually just the wing sound?
And yes, definitely just the wings. That's what's really cool. And there's an example in one of the groups of a woodcock, American woodcock, and that's another sound. It's, a lot of people think is coming out of the voice box, but it's not. It's wing sounds. Anything else? If you're on the phone, you can just say, "Hey, got a question?" All right. Well, feel free to type it in at any point again, and we'll get to it. So we take another little break. So when you're listening, listen for these qualities of sound. It'll help you again start to hone in on the sound, make it easier to remember once you start to break it down into components. Think about it. So one thing is rhythm. You want to think about what is it fast? Is it slow? Does it have a certain pattern that is easy to recall? Denise, remember she talked about how she will use just tapping on her arm as a way to sort of remember the rhythm and pattern of a sound, which I thought was really cool. Doing that sort of physical movement and something to help you remember it. And also remember also listen for the pitch or the tone. Is it a high pitched sound or a low pitched sound? And the timbre or quality of the sound. Is it burry? Is it sweet? Is it pure? Is it a little more complex? And then the repetition or pattern. So we sort of mentioned that. What is there a pattern you can recall or really describe? And is it repeated often? And then mnemonics are used as sort of a listening, a memory device. We often use phrases, nonsense syllables or English words to kind of help us recall some of these qualities. So recall the rhythm and the pitch and the pattern. They don't necessarily read exactly like what you're hearing in the field, but it just associating them with the sound often helps you remember them better. Some examples here. So we'll go through all of these things with one bird here, the yellow warbler. I'll play the sound first. This is the song of the yellow warbler, another little small migratory songbird. So the rhythm seems like it's medium at first and then faster. So it seems to have two parts, medium speed at the beginning, faster at the end, much faster at the end. The pitch sounds high to me, very high pitched. The timbre is sort of sweet and emphatic. It's kind of pure notes. They're kind of sweet and they're very, strongly sung. And the repetition, there's the first part and a second part, and we described the rhythm of those two parts. And then the mnemonic phrasing for this is typically sweet, 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 sweeter and sweet. I don't know if you can hear that. Sweet, 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 sweeter and sweet. Oh, stop. These audio things like to play themselves. Okay. So mnemonics, again, they're just a way to remember stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to do with birds or even phrasing. It's just a memory device essentially. But with birding, often it's referring to these phrases we use to describe the sounds. So let's listen to a few here. That one that was started playing is the blue-winged warbler, often described as bee buzz. And that can be described also as a raspy inhaling and exhaling. The other ones I have on this page are a song sparrow. Its song is described as madge, 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 put on your tea kettle, lettle, lettle, lettle. There we go. Try to listen for that. Match, match, match. I would focus on those three. I actually did two there, and that's actually part of what I wanted to say because I would focus on those introductory notes, madge, madge, madge. If you hear two or three, even four introductory notes like that, they're kind of pure. And then you hear a jumble of trills and whistles and sort of other rough sounds. You probably have a song sparrow. And the hook for me is that introduction, match, match, match. And then they go on off on their own. And it can vary after that quite a bit. The white-breasted nuthatch, in contrast, doesn't have a song, just has a call, and it's usually described as yank, 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 nasally. So you can sort of hear that yank, yank, yank. Okay. So we're going to move into the group listening activity, I believe, unless there's any other questions about what we talked about before we move on.
Yeah, we did have another question come up from Dave, and he's asking, what time of day are you most likely to hear the grouse?
Ooh, yeah. I am not certain if you can hear that only at certain times of day. I've heard it in the middle of the day. So my guess is they will do that throughout the day. I would probably have to get back to you for sure, but we have some good resources that we have. All About Birds probably is a good one to find out that answer. So I'll try to figure that out at some point and get back to you. But if we don't have time, just check out All About Birds, see if they can answer that for you.
Great. Yeah. Before we break up into our small groups, were there any other questions? We'll leave another little pause. I'll do a little double checking on numbers.
Okay, and I'm going to describe this while you're doing
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
Each group, there's going to be 4, I believe. Kathleen, are we doing that? We have enough? Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have 4 groups. Yes. Mhm.
10 plus sounds in each group. They're sort of grouped into categories, and those are mostly family categories, the bird families. So it's a taxonomic grouping. And then you'll listen to each group of sounds, and then you'll discuss those sounds and how they compare to each other within your group. And then after the activity, we're going to come back to the full group, and each of the 4 breakout rooms will have a chance to discuss, a couple species that you thought were particularly interesting. You have about 5 minutes to do that. All right, well, we went in order last time, so why don't we go backwards this time? Group 4.
Okay, that was my group, and I'll admit
Oh,
that I
sorry, Brenna.
didn't assign anyone duties to report out. Would anyone in our group like to share what we talked about? Like the types of calls that we listened to and how we were able to tell them apart?
You'd think Zoom would make people less shy than in person, but somehow
It looks like you might be muted, Mary, if you're trying to talk.
Okay, Katie.
So our group, we heard a lot of thrushes. They're quite described. They're quite small. Well, except for, and they're mostly in the forest. But I don't know. Do you want? Yeah.
Yes, we talked about thrushes and we talked about woodpeckers. And there was a pretty sharp contrast between the different families. The thrushes tended to be more melodic. They were mostly calls that mostly songs that we heard for the thrushes. And for the woodpeckers, they had some pretty unusual sounds that like laughter or like jackhammers. They tended to be bigger birds. And you could hear some background birds in some of what we heard. We heard a red-winged blackbird in the background for the downy woodpecker. We heard a red-winged blackbird in the background for the downy. And what was the other one that was in the background that you heard, Katie?
Let's see. Oh, for the Swainson's thrush, that was a different one. There was
I think it was the wood thrush that was in the background, actually. I don't think we talked about which species it was.
Okay.
We could play it again. So maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll play one of the thrushes. Anyone in my group, do you have a vote for Hermit, Swainson's, Wood, or Robin? Katie, what do you want to hear?
you want to go with the wood thrush then?
Yeah, I like that ELA.
Okay, great. Whoops, hold on a sec. I have to share. So the mnemonic for this one is ELA. And we talked about how it's found in the woods, true to its name.
And then the very what that was an interesting bird because it started with higher notes, its timbre, and then it kind of spiraled downwards.
Yeah. So here's
Katie
that.
said it Katie said it sounds like it's playing a duet with itself, like it's harmonizing with itself.
That's how the Cornell ornithology described it.
That's so cool. I love that thought of harmonizing with yourself.
It does.
All right. Anything else that we should share? Do we want to play one of the woodpeckers maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to share this back out again. And which one should we play?
Which one do you want?
I'll let you decide.
You can play the flicker, northern flicker.
Okay, here's the flicker.
That's the one that comes up there.
And it just keeps doing that.
Except the call, it's different. I mean, it's different though.
How so? How have you heard it, Katie?
Well, the original call, it's like a sort of a scolding. I don't know what the mnemonic is.
Yeah, that's true. I just heard one last night, and it makes kind of a little bit more of a squawk. Let's look at it.
Yeah.
Let's try this. Not that one. Like that, Katie?
Well, it's kind of, but I thought it did this like scolding.
It's like
or
clear, right?
Clear. Or
Clear.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it may be hard to find. They have a lot of different sounds. And then they have the flicker, 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 flicker sound, which is what their name comes from. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. So group 3. Jim?
Sure. Sure. So Kat is going to be our spokesperson for group 3.
Yes. Okay, I'm unmuted now. Well, we listened to, let's see, the first group, I think, was in we started with Northern Cardinal and Oriole and Grosbeak and Tanager, and they all kind of live in the woods and have kind of, I don't know, kind of melodic sounds, but most of them were calls, I think. Let's see, and then we talked about other areas where the birds lived. And there's one, the sparrow, they had a trill sound, and the sound that was on a same note, but it sounded like a trill. And then the meadowlark we listened to had a sound that goes down, and then a finch had one. It sounded like it was having a conversation with another one, and the question, you know how the inflection goes up in a question. So we were hearing that. And then the Baltimore Oriole, we were saying there's the 3 tones in there or 3, I don't know, what do you call it? 3 notes, beep, 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 right in the middle of its call. And it kind of reminded me of our R2D2 talking. Is there anything else, Jim? Yeah, that one was the Oriole.
Kat, we often talk about hooks that help you remember the song for me, and that seems like a good one for you. Is like hearing those 3 notes in the middle.
Yeah, because one of the things we also talked about is the visual recognition of a bird and the auditory recognition, and how do you combine them if you don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm trying to differentiate.
And that's where we talk about some of the different websites can come in and can be really helpful as well. If you want to see a bird and hear its call, and then you're out in the field, you can kind of associate the sound with what it looks like based on what you've seen online.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Okay, let me stop sharing here.
Great. Was there anything else from your group, Jim?
I think that's it. Thank you, Kat.
Okay.
Thanks for Kat for being the spokesperson. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on to group 2. That's me and Marilyn and MJ and Nick, right?
Yeah.
All right, we had, let's see, I'll share my screen too. We had 4 different groups of birds. We had vireos, blackbirds in the blackbird family, a couple of gulls, and titmouse and chickadee, right? So, Marilyn, did you want to say anything about anything that really stood out to you?
Yeah, the vireos, it helped me because we talked about the blue-headed was slower and a little more burry. The red-eyed was faster and higher. And then the yellow-throated was the simplest. It was like 3/8, and it was the most burry. Vireos have always been tough for me, so I think that's going to help me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just that they're all kind of similar, at least these 3, but you could sort of compare the speed and burriness and complexity, right? Yeah. All right, let's see. MJ, did you want to say anything, or Nick?
Well, there was the blackbirds.
Yeah.
We had the grackle, which is kind of an ugly song. The rusty gate, I think, was the description, and it was kind of short and irritating. And then there was the red-winged blackbirds that had a nice trilling sound at the end that's very distinctive. And then there was a bobolink that had a very complicated song.
Let me play that one for people, since not everybody is likely to have heard that one. Starts out kind of simple, as Mick was saying, and then gets really complicated. If I could find the pause on the screen. There we go. All right, go ahead, Mick. Did you have...
But then we talked about the 2 types of gulls, the ring-billed gull, and it seemed to have a lot of variations in its sound, and it sounded like maybe lots of different birds. And then the herring gull tended to be a very repetitive, rhythmic sound compared to the ring-billed gull.
Yeah. Kind of that just simple caw, 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 caw. All right, what about the chickadee and the titmouse?
Well, they were both high-pitched.
These are calls, right?
They're calls, yes. And I'm having trouble remembering exactly how they sounded. I remember it was the titmouse that had kind of a unusual sound, and it had started out with a few notes, then had kind of an unusual sound, like a clicking sound almost, and then followed by a few more notes.
Yeah,
A little
ahead.
squawk at the end. And the chickadee, I always think of saying its name, saying it chickadee-dee-dee. That's one, although it seems to have a lot of other variations on that, but it ends up saying its name.
Yeah, I'll play them quickly so people can hear the comparison. I think Mick, you picked out that that sort of clicking sound in the second part titmouse that was really, I'd never really heard that before. So let's hear that quickly. So right at the beginning of that second phrase, there's kind of, it almost like clicks into itself. And I thought that was a really great perception. And then that really high-pitched initial phrase is a way that I remember that as well. And then quickly the chickadee, which most people should be familiar with. Also has some of those really high-pitched qualities to it, but not quite as maybe mechanical as the titmouse somehow. Great. Thank you, guys. All right, group one. Stop my share.
Okay, I am the spokesperson for group one. And our first grouping was 3 songs: Barred Owl, Great Horned Owl, and Mourning Dove. And I think it worked really well for our discussion to kind of use that Barred Owl song as the baseline, the who cooks for you, who cooks for you. So then we were able to compare the Great Horned Owl. It's more of a throaty resonance, and the sound, the mnemonic that we, I think, repeated was who, who. And finally, the Mourning Dove, obviously different time of day, higher in pitch than the owl, raspier than an owl, and very consistent and even. Okay. I'm going to ask Caitlin to talk about her snipe, how you identify a snipe.
Okay, yeah, we managed to do the owls, the bald-eagled osprey, and then we jumped down to the woodcock and the snipe. I'll play the snipe one first, real quick. And so to me, the snipe one, if you've heard the song Wipeout, like that surf song, the beginning of it starts very similar, in my opinion, to the snipe sound. It goes hoo 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 wipeout. And so I always think of hoo 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 snipe out, as that's how I remember the snipe, is because it has that like very kind of bouncy sound. Thank you, Gail.
I can also talk a little bit about the calls we did for bald eagle and osprey. And was it Jess who somebody made the point that, you know, you kind of can tell that they're sort of up high calls. So that helps narrow things down. And also listen for environmental sounds in all of these, particularly for the osprey. We thought we heard water sounds in there.
I can play that one a little too. Yeah, that one's faint, but it felt like we could hear a little water. But yeah, thank you, Gail. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Any other folks from group one want to make any comments?
I'm just finding this really revelatory. I really am recognizing how much I need to learn to listen better.
Yeah, it's yeah, looks like. Linda, did you have a comment?
Oh yeah, I was in group one, and we really thought the non-verbal or the non-vocal sounds were really incredible on the snipe and the woodcock.
Yeah, they're astounding. I don't know if Caitlin can tell me this, but we were out there and we met out there in April, both out there independently looking for snipe and woodcocks, and I believe they're probably they potentially could still be displaying at this time of year. So if you can go out to Cherokee Marsh North, right at sunset, it's probably worth your while. Yes, and just I don't know if everybody got that, but the snipe and the woodcock make pretty much fully non-vocal sounds. All right, well that's fantastic, guys. I love the different interpretations always. Every time I learn something from you guys on how better to remember these sounds. I'm still learning, obviously. I think it's a lifetime of learning for birds, and it's always interesting and fun. Okay, I believe we're going to switch over to Jim in a minute or two, but in the meantime, while I'm getting this ready, if anybody has sort of general questions or specific questions about what we've covered so far, just throw them in the chat. Oh, I see somebody with their hand up, Merla. Yeah, you're on. There you go.
I just have a question about the descriptive word bury. What does bury sound like?
Oh, good question. It's kind of like a sore throat. It's rough. So if you think of a pure note, like just a pure whistled note, if it's bury, it's going to be, there's going to be something raspy or rough.
How is that different than raspy, or is it just another way of saying raspy, or do they have different qualities?
I think a bury is a little softer than raspy, maybe, but they're pretty. Yeah, it's a similar description. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Vireos and what I would do is listen to a lot of the Vireo songs on All About Birds when you get a chance, and you'll hear that quality in a lot of them, that buriness, and even their calls when they're sort of agitated calls are really buried. Right here. So it's a distinctive quality that often is associated with vireos. Anyone else got any questions that you've noted, Kathleen, in the chat?
No, I think we're good. I think we're ready to hear from Jim. And yeah, if you come up with questions, we'll should have some time at the end as well. But I think we're good for now.
All right. Let me just get this up on the screen, Jim. And you're on, Jim.
He's muted.
There we go. Now I'm on. Great. Thank you for that. So we want to talk about the kind of intersection of birding and technology, and how technology can be used as a tool to really enhance this hobby. And we, in our small group, we kind of talked about it. I am going to have to use technology to go back and listen to the Wipeout song again after a description earlier. So I'm going to have to and listen to that song. So, but really these technology tools can really do a lot for us in the hobby and helping us, learn about birds, learn about their habitat, and also listen to their songs. But a couple of things to remember before we start using the technology tools. So kind of the ethics, what we call the ethics of broadcast audio in natural areas. Because, in 2023, we have some amazing recordings. You go on the internet these days, we've been listening to all throughout this presentation, we've been listening to some really great recorded audio. And we've got some great audio. We've also got some really portable devices that are pretty capable of playing back pretty high quality sounds, AKA phones. You can take an iPhone out these days and you can listen to lots of different songs and lots of different calls and all sorts of different noises, and it plays it back pretty high quality. I mean, the speakers on these devices these days, even compared to what they were 5 years ago, is pretty darn good. Not to mention with iPads and laptops and a couple other different things, just really great speakers. But because we need to be careful when we're playing these sounds or where we're playing these sounds, because they can really trigger responses in wild birds that can do things like take them away from their young. We talked about calls. What is the purpose of a call? Well, the purpose of a call is for one bird to communicate with another bird. So if we're playing a call, that call might be saying, hey, come over here, come over here. And if that's a recorded call, it's not really another bird. That bird can maybe, go away from its young or use up energy that it needs, or expose it to predators. Sometimes some calls are, hey, the area is clear, everything's good. And if we're playing that, we're not knowing it, we can really expose those birds to things that are not, not necessarily things we want to have happen. I always tell the stories a couple years ago. One of the things that we always do to prepare for this course is we, edit some sounds and do some editing of different songs, and just pull some songs and calls down from the web and edit them out to make them a little bit shorter. And I was doing some editing one Friday afternoon, and it was a nice day. It was really nice weather, and I had the windows open, and I was playing some songs and doing some other different stuff. And also I had a robin right on the windowsill just saying, hey, what's going on in there? I hear one of my friends in there. Well, what's happening? And just like, oh, didn't even think about it. Didn't think the fact that, hey, the windows are open and the birds are hearing these sounds and they're hearing their friends in here, similar things. And they're, so this robin was just perched on the windowsill, just chatting away and like, hey, well, what's going on in there? I hear one of my fellow robins in there. What's happening? So you just be careful when you're playing these sounds. Consider using headphones while in the field, or leaving your phone at home or whatever. I know it's really common. We're talking about identifying birds and hearing their songs, and wanting to hear the calls when you're out in the field. And it's really easy to do with the phone. We'll talk about different apps here in a minute, but it's really easy to do. But just use headphones if you're going to do that. You can get really earbuds and other different things these days, just so you're not disturbing the birds. Some locations actually prohibit the sound or prohibit playback. So if you're in certain areas, you might, prohibit the playback of recorded sounds. So certain parks and other different areas might prohibit that. And it's always illegal to endanger species without a permit. So it's always illegal to play back endangered species. So certain birds that might be endangered species. So just some things to keep in mind as you're going out in the field, and as you're working with some of these different things. So we'll talk about some different resources here real quick, and then if we have some time, I can demonstrate one or two of them. The first website, we've alluded to this a couple times, is allaboutbirds.org, and these are all listed, and you don't have to write these down. These are all listed in your resource guide that you're going to receive. So don't worry about writing these URLs down or these app names down. These are all listed. But All About Birds is a tremendous resource. It's produced by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And I think Katie even mentioned using it earlier. And one of the things that I like about it as a person who is living with vision loss is it's very screen reader accessible. So for those of us using Access technology, it's really easy to navigate, really easy to find the information we're looking for. Although I have noticed last couple of days, they've been popping up something saying, we'd love a donation. We'd love a donation. I've seen a couple pop-ups there recently, which are a little bit annoying, but for the most part, it's very accessible, very usable, and it's easy to navigate. And it just has lots of information about, what the bird looks like. It has pictures of the birds, has information, about the bird's habitat, and it also has the songs and calls and recordings. So, if you're going out into a field and you say, here's some of the birds that I might encounter, maybe, look up some of the different birds that you might encounter, and you can read about them, read what they look like, and also hear their songs, hear their calls, hear their non-vocal sounds, and play some of those different recordings. Or if you go out in the field and you come back and you say, I think that might have been an oriole, you can come back and you can play some different songs as well, and kind of learn about some of the different birds that you might have heard and try and identify those different things. I was telling my small group, I always do this activity in the springtime, March, when it's kind of snowy and cold outside, start thinking about springtime. I always go on this website and just start listening to different bird calls. It gets me kind of into the springtime spirit, like, hey, it's going to be nice out soon, and these birds are going to be chirping away. But also kind of refreshes my memory. Here's what these different birds sound like. Some of the different common birds that we hear in this area kind of gets me, here's what these birds sound like. So, so All About Birds, and it is a free website. And like I said, you can learn which environments each bird species prefers. You can, listen to the bird calls. You can read the descriptions. So there's lots of really great information on allaboutbirds.org. Definitely recommend it checking out if you're into the hobby. It's a great website to check out. There's another similar website also by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology called birdsoftheworld.org. And this one has a little bit more extensive information about each bird and some different calls, and you might find some different more information. There is a subscription to use birdsoftheworld.org. To really get into it, you have to get a subscription. I think a subscription is, I think it's $8 per month or $50 per year. I think that's about the recent price that I saw on there. But it has kind of, like the name says, birds from all around the world. So if you're looking for birds in South America or Asia, you might find some different bird species there. All About Birds is mainly North American birds. So it's something to check out if you're looking for kind of more international birds. Much more information is covered. Like I say, birds of the entire world. And there is a subscription. So those are just two, allaboutbirds.org and birdsoftheworld.org. Definitely really good websites to check out, and just some great resources you can use to kind of hear some songs, hear some calls, read about the different birds, and check them out. Now, we all carry these things in our pocket these days called smartphones. And smartphones have lots of different apps that you can use to identify birds and learn about birds. And there's a number of different apps. We could do a whole class on different apps that you can get for birding, because there's a number of them out there. But just want to highlight two that I really like and I've used several times. And we'll talk about these different apps. The first one is called Larkwire. And Larkwire is learning about kind of songs and kind of a game-based system. So it's kind of a fun, kind of a group activity, actually. You have a couple of friends who are kind of into birding. You can kind of sit down and play some games with them, and you can check out, different, if you hear a song, you might guess, hey, what do you think this is? And he gives a couple different choices. You can kind of do some other different bird trivia, some other different things. Most of it is free. There are some packs you can purchase, but there's some kind of what they call in-app purchases, I think is what they call. But just to do the basic stuff, the basic birds of the area is free, so you can get that for pretty much free. It's available for Apple phones. It's also available on the web. So if you have an Android phone, I don't think it's available for Android quite yet, but you can go to the website, which is just larkwire.org, I think. Or maybe it's larkwire.com. I think it is. There's a web, if you just Google Larkwire, you'll find it. And there's a web version you can play. And you can play pretty much the same as the app right on the web. So if you're not into smartphones, you want to use it on the web. And again, it's very accessible for those of us using access technology. It works really well, and it's very easy to use. It's just kind of a fun activity. So kind of another cool app to check out. And then the last app that I'll talk about is one of my favorite. It's a really cool app. It's called Merlin Bird ID. And this is available for both Apple and Android. So there's definitely an Android version for this. And it's really kind of cool. There's lots of different information in Merlin, and some really kind of cool tools. Tools for identifying birds. You can answer 3 questions to get a possible match to identify a bird. You can do a sound ID. And a sound ID is really, there's done a lot with it over the last couple months. And you can take a recording, and it will listen to that sound recording and try and identify some of the different sounds, the different birds that it's hearing. And that's kind of a really fun thing. I mentioned in my small group, I was in my driveway last night because it was such a beautiful evening outside. I said, I have to take advantage of this nice weather. I knew it was going to get cold and rainy today. And so I was out in my driveway last night, just kind of listening to some different birds. And I pulled a lawn chair out and was kind of just sitting out there. And I heard a couple different birds. And I said, I wonder what those birds are. I'm not quite sure. So I pulled out Merlin, and I did a sound check, and I did a sound recording, and it told me that it was a house finch. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So then I went in, and you can actually select that bird, and I put on my headphones because I didn't want to disturb the natural environment. But then I was able to listen to several songs and calls of the house finch right within the app. So the app has information about the birds. Not only can you identify birds, but you can also learn about the birds. And like the websites, you can hear different calls, hear different songs. So if you hear a song say identifies this as, hey, this is a robin or whatever, and then you want to go in and learn about that bird, you can go in and read about the bird, and you can hear different information about the bird, hear the songs, hear the calls. So it's a really cool app. It is free, and it's available on Android and it is also available on Apple phones as well. So if you're into birding and you have a smartphone, I really recommend getting a copy of the Merlin Bird ID app. It's a cool app to play with. Initial setup, I will say this, when you do the initial setup, you want to be at home or someplace where you have a good Wi-Fi connection, because it does download a bunch of data to begin with. I think it installs a bunch of different like Bird ID packs and a couple of different things. So I made the mistake of the first time I installed, I wasn't near my house, and it was, I want to download this big chunk of data. I said, not over my cell plan, probably not. So you want to be kind of near a good Wi-Fi connection. So at your house or a coffee shop or someplace that has good Wi-Fi when you're doing the initial setup. But once you get it set up, it doesn't use a whole lot of data, and it does most of the identification right on your phone. And it's a really cool app to check out. So again, these are all listed in your resource guide. These are all available if you want to learn more about them. We offer technology training at the council. So if you're looking to learn how to use these with your access technology of choice, that's something we can help you navigate and do as well. So absolutely something we can do. So really cool tools to really enhance the hobby of birding, because there's just so much great information out there on this great big thing that we call the internet. And it can really enhance the hobby and just give you so much cool information and great ways to learn about the different birds that you may encounter. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Jim. Fantastic. So glad Merlin is working out. I have a friend who's working on it, and I'm glad it's just getting better and better, I think.
It really is. I mean, just over the past couple months, they've made some really nice improvements, and now when it's recording, even when it's recording, it will actually list the birds that it thinks it's hearing as it's recording, which is kind of cool too.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the last Thursday night that you can sort of limit this part of the song or call just to narrow down what you might be hearing, because obviously it can hear different things, right?
Right. Yeah. So if it hears 3 different bird calls, it'll tell you which one it's hearing. You can and you can actually select that one. I haven't found a good way to do it with the screener yet, but apparently there's a way to do it. So you can select that one. Say, hey, just listen to this one. I think this is like this one. You can just listen to this one. So that can be really helpful and really useful as well.
Yeah, something for them to work on, make that accessible. Looks like there's Denise has her hand raised, and we have one question, it looks like. Oh, it was the website for Larkwires on the chat box.
Yeah. So that was, to clarify for the Larkwire website, that is larkwire.com. And again, in the resources that were sent out, these are mentioned, plus a lot others of other resources. But yes, Denise had her hand raised. So Denise.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Gary. Another lovely aspect of the Merlin app is that if you use it with location services on, it will interface with the right birds for that area. So I was in Austin, Texas in late March for work, and I got off the plane and I'm like, I hear a bird and I want to know what that is. I could tell what family it was in. But it was not anything I'd heard before. And then it was able to identify it as some kind of gigundo grackle that lives in the Austin area. So very cool app to have that location service.
Yeah, that would probably be the great-tailed grackle.
That was exactly right.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, very similar to ours, but much bigger and louder.
Oops.
Just to wrap up, I just want to emphasize a couple things so that it doesn't drive you crazy when you're first starting. Start small and local. Jim made a great point. You can just sit in your lawn chair outside of your house, outside of your apartment, and listen to what's there. You don't have to go to the wilderness to do this. Sometimes it's just, there's a whole bunch right in your neighborhood. So try that. Definitely try to use associations with place and time of year, the association with other birds. Use those mnemonic phrases or make your own up. That'll probably be even more useful is if you make your own associations. And just be patient with yourself. And again, I'll emphasize that humans can do this. You can do this. you can recognize thousands of different songs and voices immediately. So bird song shouldn't be any different, really. And then finally, don't forget our field trip, so we can actually go outdoors and listen to birds at Warner Park, either May 6th or May 11th. And I believe I'll let Kathleen wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. And so, yeah, we've got those 2 field trips. Just wanted to let you all know we will be sending out additional information so you know where in Warner Park is a good place to meet. Also, for anyone who has requested help with getting a ride or a sighted guide, we are working on those connections. And I'll just open it up to, we've had a couple participants say that they would be happy to help with rides. So if you haven't already requested a ride, or if you might like to help with that, let me know and we'll do some matching there to make sure folks get to the right place. But yes, that email will be coming out before too long with additional information. And with that, unless there are other questions, on behalf of the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired and the Madison Audubon Society, I would just like to say a big thank you for joining us, and a big thank you to our presenters and our group leaders for lending your time and expertise and sharing all of that, and to everyone again for coming with questions and the ready to learn. So